Have you ever wondered how one simple act of kindness could change your life forever? Imagine waking up on an ordinary morning, broke and worried about rent, only to find yourself face to face with a powerful millionaire who seems like he's walked straight out of a magazine. That's exactly what happened to Ebony Knight, an everyday girl with a huge heart and a mysterious ring on her finger. When his flashy car broke down, Ebony's only thought was to help, unaware of the jaw-dropping secrets it would unravel. Get ready for a roller coaster tale of betrayal, redemption, and shocking twists that prove karma always comes back hard. Ebony Knight had always been known in her community for her bright smile and willingness to extend a helping hand, even when she struggled herself. The name Knight felt symbolic. She was like a quiet knight in shining armor to those in need. She lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, a bustling city with dramatic contrasts between privilege and poverty. Ebony was on the lower end of that scale, doing everything she could to keep her life afloat. As a 25-year-old African-American woman, Ebony prided herself on her independence and resilience. But life had been anything but easy. She had grown up with her grandmother Gwendolyn, who worked multiple jobs as a housekeeper and a part-time seamstress. Just to put food on the table, Ebony's parents had passed away when she was a toddler, one in a car accident, the other from a long, devastating illness. So Gwendolyn was all she had, and Ebony had promised to take care of her as soon as she could. However, the reality was that Ebony herself struggled to make ends meet. She worked days as a receptionist at a local auto repair shop, fulfilling administrative tasks, filing paperwork, and occasionally assisting with minor tasks in the garage. At night, she tried to save enough energy to study business administration online. She dreamed of running her own event planning company one day, a dream sparked by her love for organizing birthday parties and gatherings at her church as a teenager. Her fiancé, Malcolm Reed, was a few years older. They had met when Ebony was in high school, and their relationship quickly escalated. Malcolm proposed to her on her 23rd birthday, presenting her with a small diamond ring that Ebony cherished. It wasn't extravagant, but it was precious to her. At least it had been. As time went on, the ring felt heavier, with the tension that had seeped into their relationship. Malcolm had grown distant and irritable, especially after losing several jobs. He constantly complained about how life was unfair and how he deserved better. Despite Ebony's unwavering support, it seemed nothing could satisfy him. Every morning, Ebony woke up around 6, prepared a simple breakfast, often just toast and scrambled eggs, and made sure she had enough time to check on her grandmother, who lived in a small senior living complex across town. Then she'd hop on the bus or occasionally snag a ride from Malcolm if he felt like it to get to the auto shop by 8. That morning, Ebony was feeling off. There was a heaviness in the air, like the world was about to change drastically. She brushed the feeling aside. She had bigger problems, like paying overdue bills and trying not to be late for work again. Dressed in her usual jeans, tennis shoes, and a plain grey t-shirt with the shop's logo, Ebony was out the door. Little did she know destiny was about to make an abrupt turn. The sun had barely risen, painting the sky in soft pinks and blues, when Ebony found herself standing at a bus stop downtown. Waiting 5 minutes turned to 10, then 15. The bus was running late, and she was already anxious about being on time for work. She couldn't afford to lose even $1 from her paycheck. Just as she was debating whether to call her boss and let him know, she heard an engine sputtering. Looking up, Ebony spotted a sleek silver Bentley pulled over on the opposite side of the road. A man in a tailored suit stood beside it, glaring at the engine as though it had betrayed him. Intrigued and slightly amused, who would have expected a fancy Bentley to break down in the middle of downtown Ebony, glanced around. To her surprise, no one else bothered to help, too busy rushing to their own destinations. The man seemed a bit out of place, perhaps on his way to an important meeting or event. She debated if she should step in. After all, it wasn't exactly safe to approach strangers, and Ebony had to get to work. Yet something nudged her innate kindness. Maybe she could help him push it off the road, or at least direct him to the nearest auto shop. She crossed the street, ignoring the anxious flutter in her stomach. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Do you need help? I work at a repair shop nearby. I can call a tow truck for you." The man turned around. Frustration etched on his handsome face. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with a neatly trimmed beard and the posture of someone used to being in charge. He wore an expensive watch that caught the morning sunlight, and his shoes, Ebony noticed, were spotless. He started seeming surprised that anyone had bothered to approach him. "Yes, please. I have no idea why this thing decided to conk out on me today. I have a meeting in half an hour, and now I'm stranded." Without hesitation, Ebony pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and dialed the number of the shop's tow truck driver. She explained the situation briefly. The man watched her carefully, a mix of relief and curiosity in his eyes. "I appreciate this," he murmured. "I'm Jonathan Brooks, by the way. I assume you work at what's the name of the shop, Melvin's Auto?" Ebony said, offering a small smile. "I'm Ebony Knight. Nice to meet you. Thank you for stopping." I swear I was about to lose my mind. Jonathan exhaled, checking his watch. "This meeting is pretty critical, though. I don't know if I can wait for a tow." Ebony considered the problem. "Well, if you just need a quick fix, maybe I can help. I'm not a mechanic exactly, but I've learned a thing or two from the guys in the shop." Before Jonathan could object, Ebony popped the hood, rummaged around with minimal tools she kept in her bag, and tapped gently on a component. It was a loose battery connector, and Ebony had often seen the mechanics tighten it. Within minutes, she had done a quick fix. She straightened her face, shining with a sense of accomplishment. "Try turning it on now," she suggested. He slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Jonathan's eyes widened. How did you do that so fast?" Ebony just shrugged, wiping her slightly greasy hands on a rag. "It wasn't anything major," she replied. "But you should still take it to our shop to get a proper check. The battery connector might be damaged and could cause trouble again." Jonathan stepped out of the car. He looked at Ebony with an odd expression, like seeing someone entirely new. People in his world rarely offered help without expecting something in return. He reached into his wallet and took out a wad of bills. Ebony's eyes widened, but she quickly raised her hands in protest. "That's not necessary, really. I just wanted to help. That's incredibly kind." "Are you sure?" Jonathan asked, clearly taken aback by her refusal. Ebony simply nodded. "Yes, I'm sure. But if you want to bring your car to Melvin's Auto for a follow-up inspection, that would be more than enough." She started to turn away, but Jonathan's gaze caught something else, a small ring on Ebony's finger. It looked modest, but well cared for, almost shining in the morning light. The diamond was tiny, but Ebony wore it with pride. A flicker of sadness danced across her face as she pulled her hand away. "Thank you again," Jonathan repeated, checking his watch. "I really appreciate it. If you're ever in need, I'll be fine," Ebony said quickly. "Just get to your meeting safely." With that, Ebony hurried off, relieved she had managed to do something good, but equally anxious about her own timeline. The last thing she needed was to be late for work. Again, Jonathan watched her until she disappeared around the corner, a nagging curiosity tugging at the edge of his mind. Despite her good deed, Ebony arrived at Melvin's auto a solid half-hour late. Her boss, Melvin Turner, was a middle-aged man who had built the shop from the ground up. He cared for Ebony like a daughter, but also ran a tight ship. One lateness was excusable, but Ebony had been running on razor-thin margins these past few weeks, often clocking in just in the nick of time or slightly after Ebony. Melvin said sternly, peering over his glasses, "You know I value your work here, but this is the third time in 2 weeks." She nodded apologetically. "I'm really sorry, Melvin. There was an issue with the bus and then—" He waved her off gently. "Look, I understand. You're a good kid and we're short-staffed as it is, but I need you to be more punctual. Let's not make it a habit, okay?" Ebony nodded fervently. "I promise. It won't happen again." The shop was bustling that morning, with half a dozen cars in various stages of repair. Ebony dove into her receptionist duties, making calls, filing invoices, ordering spare parts. Throughout the day, her mind flickered back to Jonathan Brooks and that Bentley. He'd seemed so grateful, yet shocked by her act of kindness. Ebony wondered if he'd actually come by the shop, or if he was just another city stranger she'd never see again. Just as the thought left her mind, she spotted headlights shining through the shop's wide windows. A sleek silver Bentley rolled into the lot. Ebony's heart did a little flip. He'd actually come. Grabbing a clipboard, she rushed out to greet him, feeling a swirl of excitement and apprehension. Jonathan stepped out, looking visibly more relaxed than he had that morning. So he said, greeting Ebony with a friendly nod. "I took your advice. I'd rather fix it properly than risk breaking down again." Ebony introduced him to some of the mechanics. Melvin personally oversaw the inspection, flattered by the prospect of working on such an expensive vehicle. Jonathan took the opportunity to chat more with Ebony, asking about her role at the shop, how she got interested in automotive work, and if she had any formal training. "Oh, I'm not really a mechanic," Ebony explained, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm just the receptionist. I pick up a few tricks here and there. My fiancé's father was a mechanic for the city buses, so I used to watch him fix engines sometimes." Jonathan's eyes flitted to her ring again. Something Ebony noticed but chose to ignore. "Your fiancé must be proud of you," Jonathan remarked. "You're quite skilled." Ebony gave a polite smile, forcing down the uneasy feeling in her stomach. Lately, Malcolm had not seemed proud at all, more annoyed that Ebony poured energy into her job while he drifted from one half-hearted hustle to the next. But she kept her troubles to herself. Jonathan, a stranger, albeit a very wealthy one, didn't need to know her personal woes. Once the Bentley's inspection was done, Melvin handed over a detailed list of recommended maintenance. Jonathan nodded, not batting an eye at the cost. He handed over his credit card, leaving Ebony to handle the paperwork. Before he left, he paused in front of the reception desk, looking thoughtful. "I really want to repay your kindness," he said in a low voice. "Let me do something for you. Anything you need, a recommendation, letter, a donation to a cause you care about, or even if you need personal help, I owe you." Ebony blushed slightly. She wasn't used to grand gestures. "That's very generous, but I promise I'm okay. Just happy I could help." He nodded slowly, as though unconvinced. "Well, if you change your mind, here's my card." He handed her a sleek business card with embossed lettering. Jonathan Brooks. Brooks. Consultancy Group. The name sounded familiar. Ebony couldn't place it, but she assumed it was one of those high-powered firms downtown that specialized in finance or management. She carefully slid the card into her desk drawer. "Thank you again," Jonathan said, then glanced at her ring once more, Before leaving, Ebony released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. There was something about Jonathan, something that felt oddly comforting and also nerve-wracking at the same time. She reminded herself that she was engaged to Malcolm. She had a life plan, chaotic though it might be. She didn't need more complications. When Ebony finally made it home that evening, the apartment was dark except for the flicker of the TV. Malcolm was sprawled on the couch, phone in hand. The smell of fast food containers greeted her from the kitchen table. "Hey," she said softly, dropping her bag on a chair. "How was your day?" He barely looked up. "Fine," he muttered. "Did you pick up my jacket from the dry cleaner?" Ebony bit her lip. She'd forgotten. "Oh, I'm sorry. Work was hectic. I'll get it tomorrow." Malcolm rolled his eyes, tossing his phone aside. "Ebony, I asked for one thing. I need that jacket for a business meeting on Friday." "Then I'll go first thing in the morning," she offered. "They open at 7. He let out a dismissive sigh. "Whatever. By the way, we need to talk about rent. You know, I'm in between gigs right now, so maybe you can spot me this month." Ebony's shoulders tensed. "Spot you, Malcolm. I already pay most of the bills. We had an agreement that you would cover at least half the rent after you found a new job." He stood up, towering over her. "I'm working on something, Ebony. But these things take time. I need more capital for my new business idea," my friend said. "We can flip electronics for a profit. All I need is a small investment." Red flags started dancing in Ebony's mind. She had heard countless schemes from Malcolm, none of which had ever panned out. She was beginning to wonder if he'd always been this way, and she simply refused to see it. "I can't lend you any more money," Ebony said firmly. "I've got bills to pay. My grandmother's medication isn't cheap, and I'm already behind on some payments." "I'm sorry, Malcolm, but I can't." His voice rose. "Where else am I supposed to get it?" "You know what, Ebony? Sometimes I feel like you don't believe in me." Ebony's heart twisted. She didn't want to fight. "I do believe in you," she lied, or maybe she still held on to some sliver of hope. "But we have to be realistic," Malcolm scoffed, brushing past her and heading for the bedroom. Ebony sat on the couch, tears of frustration threatening to spill. She stared at her engagement ring, remembering how excited she'd been when Malcolm first slipped it on her finger. His father had even given them a blessing at the time. Now that excitement felt distant, buried beneath resentment arguments and disappointment. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine and stress. Ebony juggled her job at Melvin's Auto, her grandmother's needs, and the tension at home. She was grateful that Jonathan Brooks never pushed for contact. He'd come in one more time for a scheduled maintenance check, leaving Ebony a polite greeting and a quick wave. But that was it. One Friday afternoon, Ebony's phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother's caretaker, Ms. Knight. "Your grandmother fell today. She's stable, but needs you to come sign some hospital forms." Panic spiked in Ebony's chest. She quickly asked Melvin for permission to leave early, which he granted, and rushed to the bus stop. At the hospital, Ebony found her grandmother resting in a chair in the ER waiting area. Gwendolyn looked tired, her silver hair tucked under a scarf. She reached for Ebony's hand the moment she saw her. "I'm fine, child," Gwendolyn said in a shaky voice. "Just lost my balance. They say I need a walking aid now, but I don't want to be a burden." Ebony swallowed the lump in her throat. "You're never a burden. I'll figure something out." The hospital forms took almost an hour to process, and by the time Ebony finished, she was faced with a new headache. The caretaker told her that insurance wouldn't cover all of Gwendolyn's medical equipment. Ebony would need to pay out of pocket, for some of it nearly $500 money she didn't have at the moment. She felt tears threaten again. The stress was mounting, and Ebony had no idea where to turn. As she walked back to the waiting area, she passed by a window overlooking the parking lot. Her eyes landed on a familiar silver Bentley. Her heart skipped a beat. Jonathan Brooks. Why is he here? Sure enough, as Ebony made her way to the elevator, she spotted Jonathan in the hallway, talking quietly with a doctor. He looked serious, concerned. Ebony's curiosity flared, but she tried to mind her own business. Perhaps he was there for a personal reason. Maybe a family member was ill. She didn't want to intrude. Yet as she reached the elevator, Jonathan glanced over and noticed her. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Then he smiled and walked over. "Ebony, are you okay?" She forced a smile. "I'm fine. My grandmother had a minor accident. I'm just here to sign some forms." "What about you?" He sighed. "I'm here for a friend who got into a car accident. He's stable, but it's been a stressful day." They shared a moment of empathy. Two strangers connected by chance, each carrying burdens in a stark white hospital corridor. "I hope your friend recovers soon," Ebony said softly. Jonathan nodded. "And I hope your grandmother recovers as well. If you need anything." He hesitated, then reached into his wallet. "Look, I know you refused last time, but let me help you. Hospitals can be expensive, and I don't want you to struggle." Immediately, Ebony shook her head, a prideful reflex. "I appreciate it, but I can't just accept your money." Jonathan glanced around. "Look, Ebony, you helped me when I was stranded, and I'm not used to being unable to repay kindness. It weighs on me." Please consider it. Ebony's resolve wavered, not because she suddenly became less proud, but because the weight of her financial situation was crushing her. Still, something in her made her hold firm. "You know, if you really want to help, maybe you could connect me with some small business opportunities or advice. I'm trying to start my own event planning service." Eventually, Jonathan's face lit up. "Now that I can do, why don't you give me your email? I can send you some resources and maybe introduce you to a few people in my network who do event management." Relief and excitement coursed through Ebony. "Thank you," she murmured, scribbling her email on a piece of paper. It felt more comfortable to accept professional assistance than charity. Jonathan gently folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Before they could continue, a nurse approached Ebony, telling her that Gwendolyn was ready for discharge. She excused herself with a small, grateful smile toward Jonathan, feeling a bit lighter than she had a few minutes ago. True to his word, Jonathan emailed Ebony links to small business grants and training programs. He even recommended a local event coordinator, Ms. Janice Lawson, who had over 20 years of experience in corporate and private events. Ebony was shocked by how fast things moved. Within days, she found herself exchanging emails with Janice, who was looking for an assistant to help coordinate an upcoming charity gala. One afternoon, Ebony was at work sorting paperwork when her phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. "Hi, Ebony Knight. This is Janice Lawson. Jonathan Brooks gave me your info. I've got a gala in 3 weeks, and I need someone who's detail-oriented and creative to help me plan. Are you interested?" Ebony nearly dropped the phone in excitement. "Yes, absolutely. Great," Janice said. "We'll need to meet soon to go over the details. It's a paid gig, and if all goes well, it could lead to more work." Ebony was so thrilled she almost forgot where she was. She quickly composed herself and stepped into the break room to finalize details. The pay Janice offered was considerably more than Ebony made in a week at the auto shop, even if it was a one-time project. It felt like the door to her future had cracked open. After the call ended, Ebony pressed the phone to her chest, eyes brimming with tears of joy. It wasn't a full-time solution, but it was the beginning of something she'd dreamed about for years. She glanced at her reflection in the break-room mirror, noticing how her engagement ring seemed to glimmer. She wondered if Malcolm would be happy for her, or if it would spark another argument. That evening, Ebony raced home with good news. She found Malcolm hunched over his laptop, a scowl on his face. "Guess what?" Ebony said, breathless with excitement. "I just got offered an assistant job for a huge gala. It pays well, and if I do a good job, it could lead to bigger opportunities. We might be able to catch up on rent." And Malcolm cut her off with a disinterested shrug. "That's good, I guess." He didn't even look up from his screen. "I'm busy trying to figure out this online business. If you have some extra money coming in, maybe you can invest in it." The cold response stung, but Ebony tried to focus on the positive. She set her bag down and gently touched Malcolm's shoulder. "Let's talk about your plans later. Right now, I just want to celebrate this small win. You know." He gave a non-committal grunt, which was about as much enthusiasm as Ebony expected these days. Silently, she went to the kitchen to whip up a simple dinner. Her mind buzzed with ideas for the gala, but a small gnawing worry sat in the pit of her stomach. If this was how Malcolm reacted to her successes, what would happen if she truly began to soar? Over the next 2 weeks, Ebony found herself juggling her day job, visiting her grandmother, and working closely with Janice Lawson during evenings and weekends. The gala was a fundraiser for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, a real, well-known hospital network in Georgia. Janice assigned Ebony tasks like designing the layout, contacting caterers, and organizing the silent auction items. Ebony's eyes shone with excitement each time she learned something new. Janice was tough, detail-oriented, and not big on compliments. But Ebony could see that her no-nonsense mentor was slowly warming up to her. Ebony's organizational skills and creativity shone through as she suggested color schemes, table arrangements, and interactive activities for the gala guests. She was in her element, and despite the long hours, she felt more alive than she had in years. The stress at home, however, continued to mount. Malcolm was restless, bitter about Ebony's new venture. He often accused her of being too busy for him. When Ebony tried to reason that she was doing this for both of them, he would scoff and tell her she was living in a fantasy world. One particular evening, Ebony returned home from a late planning session. She was buzzing with ideas. Janice had allowed her to propose a theme for the Gala Seeds of Hope, where each table would represent a success story of a child who had been helped by the hospital. She opened the door, hoping to share her excitement, only to find Malcolm arguing on the phone. He turned to her angrily, jabbing a finger in her direction as though it was her fault. "I'll call you back," he growled into the phone, then slammed it down. "Where have you been?" Ebony frowned. "I told you I was meeting with Janice to finalize the table arrangements. This gala is coming up in a week, and there's still a lot to do," he scoffed. "So you can't even make time for me anymore. I needed you to send out some resumes for me." "Ebony!" "You know, I hate dealing with that stuff." Her patience snapped. "Why can't you do it yourself?" "Malcolm, I'm working 2 jobs right now, taking care of my grandmother, and I barely have time to sleep. Are you even trying, or are you waiting for me to fix everything?" He glowered at her, slamming his fist on the table. "You're unbelievable. You think, just because some fancy event planner hired you, you're better than me now." Ebony's eyes widened in shock. "That's not what I'm saying at all. I want you to succeed too, but you have to actually do something about it." His gaze fell on the ring on her finger. "Don't forget who gave you that ring," he spat, as though it were some golden shackle. Tears burned at the corners of Ebony's eyes. She couldn't stand this tension any longer. Before she could say something she'd regret. She stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The ring felt heavier than ever, as though it was tethering her to a sinking ship. A few days later, Ebony and Janice were at the venue, a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Florists were setting up elaborate centerpieces. While the audio crew tested microphones on a raised stage, Janice introduced Ebony to the donors and sponsors, milling around, checking on final details. Suddenly, Ebony recognized a tall, familiar figure entering the room, Jonathan Brooks. She hadn't known he'd be involved in the gala, but then again, the event aimed to attract high-profile donors. Jonathan, wearing a sharp grey suit, smiled when he spotted her. Ebony, "I didn't realize you were working on this event," he said. Stepping closer, small world Janice beamed at Jonathan, patting Ebony on the shoulder. "We have Ebony to thank for most of the creative touches here. She's been a real asset." Ebony flushed with pride at the praise. Jonathan gave her a knowing smile. "I had a feeling you'd do well in this line of work. You have the passion and the skill." A flicker of warmth passed between them, a genuine respect and camaraderie. Ebony realized that in Jonathan's eyes, she was capable, worthy of praise. It was a feeling she rarely got at home. She quickly pushed the thought aside, focusing on the tasks at hand. Over the next hour, Ebony guided Jonathan and other sponsors through the ballroom, showing them the stage setup, the silent auction tables, and the children's stories that decorated each station. Jonathan was visibly impressed. When they were momentarily alone by the refreshment table, Jonathan turned to Ebony. "You've done an incredible job," he said earnestly. "I'm really proud of you for taking this on." Ebony found herself smiling from ear to ear. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I owe a lot to you for connecting me with Janice. She's a tough teacher. But I've learned so much." Jonathan tilted his head, his eyes drifting to the ring again. "Is your fiancé proud of you?" The question was gentle, almost concerned. Her smile faltered. "He tries, I guess. We've both been really busy." Jonathan didn't push the topic further, sensing her discomfort. Instead, he cleared his throat. "Well, I look forward to seeing you in action at the gala tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be fantastic." Ebony exhaled, grateful to move on. "Thanks, Jonathan. I'll see you then." The day of the gala was a whirlwind of last-minute preparations. Ebony arrived at the venue 6 hours early to ensure every detail was perfect, from the lighting to the table settings. Janice roamed the hall like a strict teacher, barking orders but occasionally tossing Ebony a nod of approval. By evening, the ballroom was transformed into a magical wonderland. The lights were dimmed to a soft glow. The centerpieces sparkled with tiny fairy lights, and each table had a small plaque with the story of a child who had triumphed against illness. Guests arrived dressed in formal attire, the hum of conversation building to a lively buzz. Ebony wore a simple yet elegant navy blue gown she'd borrowed from her cousin. She felt both exhausted and exhilarated as she dashed around, making sure the silent auction items were set up properly. The hors d'oeuvres were circulating, and the VIP guests had their questions answered. As the evening progressed, Ebony found herself receiving compliments from attendees who assumed she was Janice's regular assistant. One of the hospital's directors personally thanked her for her creative contributions. Ebony's cheeks hurt from smiling so widely. Eventually, she spotted Jonathan on the far side of the room, deep in conversation with a group of donors. He caught her eye and raised his champagne glass in her direction, a silent toast to her efforts. Ebony nodded back, warmth flooding her chest. A few minutes later, Janice took the stage to make an announcement, praising the entire planning team, including Ebony by name. Applause rang out, and Ebony felt tears prick at her eyes. This was what she'd dreamed of, making a difference, creating experiences that touched people's lives. Just then, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she froze at the sight of Malcolm standing behind her, wearing a rumpled suit and a scowl. Her heart sank. "What are you doing here, Ebony?" whispered, trying to keep her composure. Malcolm glanced around disdainfully. "I wanted to see this fancy event you've been so obsessed with, and I need to talk to you about something important." "This is not the time," Ebony hissed, glancing around at the impeccably dressed guests. "I'm working." Malcolm ignored her protest and grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward a quieter corner. He looked agitated, panicked. "Even I need $2,000 tonight." Ebony's mouth fell open. "What I made an investment I can't cover." "Okay. I promised my partner I'd have the cash by tomorrow morning. Can you get an advance from the event lady? Or maybe are you serious right now?" Ebony snapped her voice, trembling. "This is my first gig." "Like this?" "Malcolm, I can't ask Janice for thousands of dollars. Why would you even think that?" He clenched his fists. "Then maybe that rich guy you've been hanging around can help." "I saw the way he looked at you." Ebony stiffened, anger boiling beneath her skin. "Jonathan is just a sponsor who introduced me to this job. How dare you suggest I beg him for money?" Malcolm scoffed. "You're wearing a cheap ring while you cozy up to a millionaire. Don't act so innocent. If he's so generous, ask him for a loan." Her eyes brimmed with tears of fury. "I can't believe you. You're supposed to be my fiancé, the person who supports me. Instead, you're humiliating me in front of these people." She yanked her wrist free, her voice raw. "I'm done, Malcolm." He froze. "Done with what? Done with you. Done with your schemes. Done with your complete lack of respect for me." She ripped off the engagement ring, her hand shaking. "Take this back. I can't do this anymore." Malcolm's face twisted with rage and desperation. He slapped the ring out of her hand. It clattered to the floor, drawing the attention of a few nearby guests. Ebony gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before either of them could speak again, Jonathan Brooks, having noticed the commotion, swiftly approached. "Is everything all right?" He spoke calmly, but assertively, stepping between Ebony and Malcolm. Malcolm glared at Jonathan, eyes filled with bitterness. "This is none of your business. Rich boy." Jonathan didn't flinch. He glanced at Ebony. "You don't have to stay here if you don't feel safe," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Ebony could barely breathe. She had never felt so mortified. Mustering her last shred of composure, she bent down to pick up the ring from the floor and placed it in Malcolm's hand. "Goodbye, Malcolm," she whispered, then hurried away, ignoring the stares of concerned onlookers. The rest of the gala was a blur for Ebony. Janice noticed her distress, ushered her to a private room to compose herself, and then insisted she take the rest of the night off. Ebony tried to protest. She didn't want to abandon her duties, but Janice's maternal side overruled everything. "You've done more than enough, and the night's already a success." Janice said gently, "Go home, Ebony, or wherever you need to go, to breathe." Embarrassed and upset, Ebony slipped out of the venue through a side exit. She stood on the sidewalk, clutching her small handbag, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had nowhere to go but her shared apartment with Malcolm, which she now dreaded. Suddenly a soft voice spoke behind her. "Ebony." She turned to see Jonathan standing a few feet away, his expression laced with concern. "I didn't mean to pry earlier," he said, taking a cautious step forward. "But I saw you leaving, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." Ebony swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm not sure what I am right now." Jonathan searched her eyes. "Do you need a ride somewhere, or help finding a hotel room for the night? I know it's none of my business." But, despite everything, Ebony managed a sad smile. "I appreciate it, really. But I can't let you fix my problems." He seemed to understand. Sometimes it's okay to lean on someone for a moment. It doesn't mean you're weak. Her resolve wavered, exhaustion taking over. She was homeless in spirit, if not in fact, because going back to Malcolm's place was unthinkable. Finally she nodded. "A ride would be nice. I have a spare key to my grandmother's apartment. She's at her care facility tonight, but I can stay there." I guess Jonathan guided her gently to his car. "I'll take you," he offered, simply opening the passenger door of the Bentley. The drive was silent for the first few minutes. Ebony stared out the window, her thoughts tangling. She wondered if she'd just made a colossal mistake, throwing Malcolm out of her life, or if it was the best decision she could have made. Eventually, Jonathan broke the silence. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that tonight," he said softly. "I don't know the whole story, but nobody should treat you like that." Ebony's shoulders quivered. She leaned her head against the window. "I just couldn't do it anymore. He's not the man I thought he was when we got engaged. Or maybe I was just blind." They arrived at her grandmother's small apartment complex. Jonathan cut the engine and turned to Ebony. "If you need anything, groceries, someone to talk to, anything at all, please let me know." Ebony nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've been too kind. Thank you." He waited until she was safely inside before driving away. Ebony locked the door, slid down to the floor, and finally let herself sob. She thought about the ring she had worn so proudly now, cast away. Maybe it was a sign, she thought, a sign that this chapter of her life needed to end, so a new one could begin. The next day, Ebony woke up on her grandmother's couch, stiff and sore from crying herself to sleep. She checked her phone, half expecting an onslaught of missed calls from Malcolm, but there were only a few angry texts demanding she return his calls. Ebony blocked his number, her heart heavy but resolute. She spent the morning tidying up the apartment, then contacted her grandmother's caretaker to explain the situation. Her grandmother Gwendolyn was expected to return that evening. Ebony decided she would stay for a couple of days until she could figure out her living arrangements. Around noon, Janice called praising her for the success of the gala and apologizing again for the incident. She sounded genuinely concerned and asked if Ebony wanted to take on another event in the near future. Ebony, with a shaky smile, accepted the opportunity. Despite the personal turmoil, her career dream was beginning to materialize. She couldn't walk away from that now. Later that afternoon, Melvin from the auto shop called. He had heard about Ebony's performance at the gala from some of his customers who had attended. "I'm proud of you," Kid Melvin said. "But I also know you've been going through some tough stuff. If you need a few days off, I can arrange that." Ebony thanked him for his kindness, but insisted on returning to work soon. She wanted to keep her finances stable while she built her event planning prospects. The last thing she needed was to be jobless. As she rummaged through her grandmother's cupboards to make dinner, Ebony's phone pinged with a new text. The sender was, "Jonathan, Jonathan. Hey Ebony, hope you're doing okay. I spoke with Janice. She said the gala was a big hit thanks to you. Just checking in. No pressure to reply. Here if you need anything." A small part of her hesitated, worried about how it might look if she stayed in contact with Jonathan. But she pushed that fear aside. He was simply being a friend. Someone who had shown her more respect and kindness than her own fiancé ever had in recent times. Ebony typed back a short reply. "Ebony, Thank you for checking in. I'm doing better. Staying at my grandmother's place for now. I appreciate your concern." She took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of sadness and hope. The past day had been tumultuous, but perhaps it signaled a new beginning. She clung to that thought. The next few weeks went by in a painstaking process of healing and rebuilding. Ebony officially moved out of the apartment she'd shared with Malcolm. She discovered that he'd stopped paying the rent months ago and was dangerously close to eviction. Even though her name was on the lease, Ebony decided she would rather forfeit her deposit and find peace living elsewhere than stay entangled in Malcolm's chaos. She found a modest room for rent near the auto shop, owned by an elderly widow who was happy to have a quiet, responsible tenant. Ebony split her days between the auto shop and sporadic event jobs. Some nights she studied event management courses online until she dozed off. It was busy, hectic, and at times lonely, but it was hers. One afternoon, Ebony received an unexpected call from a mutual friend, a guy named Ray, who sometimes hung out with. Malcolm Ray's voice was low and urgent. Ebony just thought, "You should know Malcolm's in trouble. He borrowed money from some shady sources, and now he can't pay them back. They're threatening him." Ebony's heart pounded. Despite everything, she didn't wish harm on Malcolm. "What do you mean, threatening?" Ray sighed. "They showed up at his place. He got kicked out, Ebony. He's on the streets right now, or couch surfing, I don't even know. He's desperate, might be looking for you to bail him out." Ebony closed her eyes. Guilt and relief warred within her. Malcolm's downfall seemed to be the harsh karma for his endless bad decisions. Still, she felt uneasy hearing how far he'd fallen. "Thanks for letting me know," Ebony said quietly. "But I can't help him." Ray paused. "Yeah, I figured. Just watch your back." "Ebony, he's been saying some nasty stuff, blaming you for everything." Ebony's stomach twisted. "I will, thanks, Ray." She ended the call, her hands trembling. She realized that while she had escaped Malcolm's toxic grip, he might still attempt to drag her down with him. She steeled herself, reminding her heart that she had made the right choice. Sometimes the hardest decisions were the ones that truly saved you. In the meantime, Ebony's budding relationship with Janice Lawson flourished. Over the next few months, Ebony assisted Janice with multiple corporate dinners, a high-profile wedding, and even a charity fundraiser for a local animal shelter. Though Ebony's schedule was relentless, each event boosted her confidence and expanded her portfolio. On a brisk Saturday morning, Janice invited Ebony to breakfast at a chic downtown cafe. Ebony arrived, nerves fluttering. Whenever Janice requested a private meeting, it often meant a new milestone or a tough critique. Janice, already sipping coffee, motioned for Ebony to sit. "Good morning, Ebony. Thanks for coming on such short notice." Ebony smiled. "No problem. Is everything okay?" Janice set her cup down. "Better than okay. I've been seeing your potential grow with each event, and I have a proposition for you." She slid a folder across the table. "I'm scaling back my workload. My kids have been complaining. I'm never home, so I want someone I trust to handle a portion of my clients. I'd like that someone to be you." Ebony's eyes widened. She flipped through the folder which contained contracts, client lists, and revenue projections. "What? You want me to work for you full-time? I want you to be my associate." Janice clarified, a small smile, cracking her normally stern features. "You'll get a share of the fees, plus bonuses, for each successful event. You've proven your mettle, and I've already recommended you to several clients who specifically requested your touch." Tears of gratitude pricked Ebony's eyes. She thought back to the Ebony of a year ago, timid, stressed, engaged to a man who drained her spirit. Now she was on the cusp of fulfilling her dreams. I don't know what to say. Janice. Thank you. I accept. Janice nodded, satisfied. We'll sort out the details next week. For now, let's just celebrate. They clinked coffee mugs, Ebony's heart brimming with excitement for what lay ahead. That afternoon, Ebony visited her grandmother, who had recently moved to a better care facility, thanks in part to Ebony's improved finances. She spent hours catching up, laughing at her grandmother's stories, and even showing her pictures from the latest wedding Ebony had helped plan. Gwendolyn couldn't stop smiling her pride in Ebony shining through every word. Leaving the facility, Ebony hopped onto a bus heading back downtown. She was on her way to meet Jonathan Brooks at a small coffee shop. He'd asked her to look over some philanthropic outreach event ideas for his consultancy group. Over time, their interactions had become more frequent, always professional, but tinged with a warm undercurrent of friendship. When she arrived, Jonathan greeted her with a quick hug, something that had become more common between them, but still made Ebony's heart flutter. They sat down at a cozy table by the window, cappuccinos in hand. I heard from Janice that you're going to be her new associate. Congratulations, Jonathan said with an earnest smile. Ebony blushed. She told me not to tell anyone until the contracts are signed, but I guess I should have known you'd find out. She's your friend, after all. Jonathan chuckled. Word travels fast in our circle. I'm really proud of you. He pulled out a neat stack of documents. So I want to host a charity mixer for some of my company's clients, and I'd like your creative input. Ebony nodded, scanning the papers. A gratitude gala. Maybe something that focuses on the success stories of local non-profits you support. As they brainstormed ideas, Ebony was struck by how well they worked together, how Jonathan respected her opinions, asked clarifying questions, and genuinely valued her input. It was a stark contrast to the belittling she'd endured in her past relationship. After an hour of productive conversation, Ebony leaned back in her chair, sipping the last of her cappuccino. You know, she said softly, this is exactly the kind of work I always dreamed of doing, bringing people together to make a difference. Jonathan's gaze lingered on her. I'm glad you found your path. You deserve every bit of success coming your way. Her cheeks warmed. She tore her eyes away, focusing on her cup. There was a moment of silence that pulsed with unspoken possibilities. Ebony Jonathan began his voice, low and carefully measured. I don't want to overstep. I know you're still healing from your past. But if you ever feel ready to, well, expand our friendship, I'd be honored. A swirl of emotions rushed through Ebony. She'd be lying if she said she hadn't felt an attraction growing, but she was also cautious, her wounds still fresh. I appreciate that, she whispered, blinking back sudden tears. I just need time. Jonathan nodded, reaching across the table to gently squeeze her hand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Just as Ebony's life seemed to be settling into a promising rhythm, a final echo from her past collided with her present in a harsh twist of fate. One morning, at Melvin's Auto, Ebony was busy sorting invoices for the month. She had reduced her hours at the shop since she was starting her new role with Janice, but she still helped out part-time to ensure a smooth transition for Melvin. The shop door swung open with a jingle. Ebony looked up, expecting a customer. Instead, she saw Malcolm disheveled, desperate, his clothes rumpled and eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. She froze, heart hammering in her chest. What are you doing here? She managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. Malcolm's gaze darted around the shop. I need money, Ebony. I'm out of options. I've been sleeping on couches. Those loan sharks are after me. Come on, You have to help me. You promised you'd always have my back." Ebony forced a shaky breath. "That was before you lied to me, used me, and disrespected me. I can't give you money. I'm sorry you're in this situation, but it's of your own making." He stumbled forward, gripping the reception desk. "Please, Ebony, I'll do anything. I just need enough to leave town and start fresh." Something in Ebony snapped. She stood up, meeting his eyes with a fierce resolve. "I begged you to turn your life around. So many times. You never listened. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people at that gala. You have no right to ask for anything now." Tears glistened in Malcolm's eyes, real or crocodile. Ebony couldn't tell. He sank to his knees, sobbing. The noise drew Melvin out of his office. Alarmed, he rushed over. "Is everything all right, Ebony?" She placed a hand on Melvin's shoulder, her voice calm. "Yes, I'm fine." Malcolm was just leaving. Malcolm's sobs turned to anger. He scrambled to his feet. "You'll regret this. All the success you have now. That should have been mine. You owe me." Melvin stepped between them. "Get out of my shop before I call the police." Malcolm glared, but fear flickered in his eyes. He realized he had no leverage here. He turned and staggered out, letting the door slam behind him. Ebony sank back into her chair, her entire body trembling. Melvin knelt beside her, gently patting her hand. "You okay, kid?" She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm okay. It just hurts to see him like that." Melvin squeezed her hand. He made his own bed. "Ebony, you can't save everyone, especially not at the cost of your own well-being." Ebony let out a shaky breath and nodded. The chapter with Malcolm was finally, unequivocally over. In the weeks that followed, Ebony threw herself wholeheartedly into her new role as Janice's associate. She also helped Jonathan plan the Gratitude Gala for Brooks Consultancy Group. Her days were busier than ever, but this time they were filled with passion and hope rather than anxiety and dread. On a sunny afternoon, Ebony arrived at a swanky rooftop venue downtown to supervise the final setup for Jonathan's charity mixer. Caterers bustled about, florists arranged vibrant bouquets, and a stage was set for live music. Ebony personally supervised each detail, wearing a professional black blazer and matching slacks. As the event began, guests in elegant attire mingled under strings of twinkling lights. Sampling gourmet appetizers, Ebony wove through the crowd, checking in with staff and greeting attendees. She spotted Jonathan by the bar, deep in conversation with a colleague. When he saw her, he excused himself and walked over. "This place looks incredible," he said, his smile as warm as the late afternoon sun. "How do you feel?" Ebony surveyed the gathering with a mix of pride and relief. "I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be." Just then, Janice approached them. "Ebony, your handiwork is wonderful as always. And Jonathan, you've got quite a turnout." She raised her champagne flute in a toast. "To Ebony may this be the first of many successful events under her guidance." They clinked glasses, Ebony's heart fluttering with happiness. She felt tears welling up, but they were tears of joy and triumph. In that moment, she reflected on her journey from a struggling receptionist with a toxic fiancé to a rising event planner with respected mentors and cherished friendships. The ring she once wore was gone, but she had found a greater sense of value in herself. Jonathan took her hand gently. "Ebony, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." He began, his tone playful, yet sincere. "I know you've been focusing on your career, and I respect that. But when you're ready, if you're ever ready, would you like to go to dinner with me? A real date." Ebony laughed softly, her eyes shining. She thought about all the heartbreak and the fear she had carried. Somehow, Jonathan's presence felt like the opposite of that. a comforting promise, a safe harbor. Someday soon, she answered, giving him a warm smile. I'd like that very much. They shared a quiet look of mutual understanding, neither rushing nor pressuring. In the background, the chatter of guests and the gentle music set a harmonious backdrop for a moment of personal victory. Ebony had chosen herself first, and in doing so, she'd opened the door to a future filled with possibility, respect, and genuine love. Thank you for joining us on this dramatic journey of heartbreak, hope, and redemption. Ebony's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest choices lead us to the brightest destinations. Her compassion toward a stranger set off a chain of events that unraveled her toxic relationship and opened the door to her destiny. Along the way, she discovered her true strength, overcame the betrayal of her ex-fiancé, and forged a new path in a career she loves, proving that genuine kindness and perseverance are never wasted. If you found yourself moved by Ebony's courage and her unstoppable drive to build a better life, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Who knows, your simple act of sharing might just spark someone else's transformation story. Thank you for watching.